Good morning and welcome back to Coffee with Tom and Joanne. I'm Joanne Toronto.
And I'm Tom Matthews. And today's topic is going to be, when is it appropriate to waive my financing contingency with an offer? So this particular segment is geared towards buyers. And I want to say that for our buyer agency practice, we don't recommend waiving the financing contingency very often, but it is a tool that you do have in your toolbox. And Joanne and I want to talk about it today because we are in a seller's market. There are more buyers than there are sellers, and contingencies are put in place to protect the buyer. So these contingencies can be removed to make the deal more advantageous for a seller. So Joanne, why don't you kick it off and tell people a little bit about the framework of the offer and the financing, and then we'll go into more detail.
Yeah, so I would say, a vast majority of people are taking out some type of mortgage, whether it's by need or by choice. And there is a process to getting a mortgage. And if you've ever done it before, you know that it's not that easy and it takes some time. So there's a financing contingency that's put in place on an offer that, the function of it is to protect your escrow funds, your earnest money deposit in the transaction. Should something wild happen, like you lose a job or, something like that, where you no longer qualify for the mortgage. So this contingency has a couple of parts to it. So one piece is where you outline how much of a mortgage you're going to apply for. And that will indicate to the seller what your down payment is in the transaction. Traditionally, the larger the down payment, the more secure the loan is. So that's, the function of, outlining how much you're going to apply for a mortgage. The secondary piece to it is that you're going to commit to the timing of this mortgage as part of the contingency. Generally speaking, it takes 3 to 4 weeks to get a mortgage. It can be done a little bit faster. It can take longer depending on the lender and the climate of the market that we're in. So what we do in the offer is we outline the date that you're going to have your application filled out by, which is typically, at or just following the signing of the purchase and sale. And then the final piece is outlining the date that you're going to get a commitment from the lender. It takes about 3 weeks to get that commitment from after you sign the purchase and sale. So what we like to do is put this financial contingency in place, but keep the dates tight so that the seller knows that you are going to apply for your mortgage and move right into the financing process so that there are no delays on the closing.
The biggest holdup we see in the financing contingency is the appraisal. It's the biggest kind of X factor. If you have an excellent buyer's agent like Joanne and myself, we will do a full market analysis, and we're very confident in the pricing we give for our buyers. On the buyer transaction side, we have not had an issue with an appraisal since like 2011 when the market was really wonky. So it's been over 10 years. But that is the biggest risk for buyers who might want to waive a contingency, because if the appraisal is not met, so let me back up first. The lender, you may say, I'm buying a house for $500,000, and the lender says, great, but we're going to lend you the money based on what our bank appraiser feels the value of the property is. So if you have that contingency in place and you've paid, say the property was on the market for $475 and you're paying $500, but the bank's appraiser goes out and says, I get that you got caught up in the emotions of the bid, but we only feel the house is worth $490. Now we have a problem. Now if you have a financing contingency in place, you have protection, because now you're not on the hook having to come up with a $10,000 difference to cover the delta to get your loan. But if you don't have the financing contingency, it's on you. And if you don't have the cash, you have a problem. And that's why the financing contingency should not be lifted unless your profile fits a certain profile. So customarily for Joanne and I, when we write an offer, we have buyers put 5% of the purchase price up at the purchase and sale date. So a house of $500,000, I think that comes out to like 20 grand. 5%, my numbers are wrong. It might be 25, somewhere in that range. But that's a lot of money, and we don't want you to leave that money on the table. So that contingency is put there to protect your money. And, so the profile that we would have for someone to waive financing contingency would be a buyer who says to us, listen, I'm putting 20% down, but I got another 20% sitting in my bank account. Or mom and dad said that if I run into any issues, they can step in. Or I have a big 401k that I don't mind taking a loan against. You know, those are the types of profiles that can be a little bit riskier in this transaction. If you're listening to this video and you don't fit that profile and you've been thinking about waiving your contingency, do not do it. Do not do it. Stop, pause.
The earnest money deposit on a home in our geography is nothing to sniff at. It is it's a large amount of money. It is at risk if you are not able to complete the loan. And we just don't feel comfortable putting people in a situation where they might be losing $25,000.
Yeah, I mean, right.
So for your purposes and for your safety, you know, it makes sense to talk to maybe loved ones or financial partners that you have that may be able to offer you some assistance in the unlikely event that you don't get a mortgage. Because most people who apply for a mortgage will get one. It's not, right. They're checking, you know, all of your details up front. There are a limited set of risks that come with getting a mortgage, but you want to be able to have some type of safety net behind you that says, okay, I'm going to be able to get to the closing table one way or another. And that's the profile of the buyer that should be considering waiving their financing.
And I also want to add that although Joanne and I didn't have any issues with our buyer side transactions, which were about 25 in 2020, we did run into appraisal issues representing sellers, where we had offers on the table where we told our sellers, these offers are outside of the range that we feel your home should sell for, but you should go for it because maybe you'll get lucky. And in 4 cases, we didn't get lucky. And all those buyers had contingencies. So we were able to come to a deal, a meeting of the minds that worked. But if any of those buyers had not had contingencies in place, they would have been at risk of either losing their deposit, because for the seller, we would say to the seller, take the buyer's deposit, pay for your mortgage payment that you thought you wouldn't have to pay, put the house back on the market, and we'll sell it to somebody else.
Right.
That sounds cold and harsh, but that's the reality of the business world. And that's why we want to educate people so that you don't end up in that position.
Right.
So I want to just thank everyone for your time today.
Yeah, we appreciate you joining us for Coffee with Tom and Joanne. I'm Joanne Toronto.
And I'm Tom Matthews. Take care.
Cheers.